Hi guys. All right, let's now have a look at the second part of requirements lifecycle management. Let me share my screen with you. All right, so there we go. Fantastic. So let's continue our discussion around requirements lifecycle management. We've covered the first three tasks already. So let's now talk about what is the task assess requirements changes. So if we look at the BABOK guide and how they define this, the purpose here is to evaluate the implications of proposed changes to requirements and designs. Now I thought I would just throw this in because it was such a good quote, and it's a good thing to keep in mind whenever change comes our way. So the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. Socrates. So keep that in mind, just as a little bit of inspiration today. Okay, let's continue. So some of the things that you should consider when you start assessing a change is, does the change align to the overall strategy? Does the change affect the value delivered to the business or stakeholder groups? What are the impacts on time to deliver or the resources required to deliver the value? And does the change alter the risks, opportunities, or constraints with the overall initiative? So in a general sense, these are the really fundamental things that needs to be considered when you start to assess what a change is all about. So let's look at the specific elements. So there are the assessment of formality, impact analysis, impact resolution. So if we start with the first element, assessment formality. So what this is about, it's really go back to your governance process that your project might have defined, or you as a business analyst may have defined as part of your business analysis approach and planning. And refer back to your change control process and make sure that you follow those steps that you've defined. Now, we have mentioned this as well in week 1, but predictive and adaptive approaches in terms of your initiative might have an effect on how formal you have to be when you assess a change request. So with predictive approaches, this is just to remind us more the waterfall type of traditional project methodologies. These tend to be more formal in nature. So you may have to go through a very formal and documented change control process. Where with adaptive, which is more around iterations and working in shorter increments, typical agile methodologies, this may have a less formal approach to change. You will still assess change and you will still consider the impacts, but it may just not be as formally documented. So let's now go to the next element around the actual impact analysis that you need to perform. So if you need to assess a change by doing an impact analysis, you should look at the following aspects. First of all, the benefit. So what is the actual benefit of making the change? Then you look at the cost, implementation cost, the cost of any rework, and opportunity cost. Are you losing some potential value? Are you costing the company more than what it's actually bringing in? So impact itself, so who's impacted by this? Is that the number of customers potentially, or it could be staff that's impacted, and of course processes may be impacted. And all of those impacts also cost money. The schedule, there could be an impact on the actual delivery timeframes. And again, it all comes back to money. So it will cost more. And then the urgency. So are there any regulatory or safety related issues that is driving this change? So this may in fact force your hand a little bit in making the change happen. But it's still very important for you to understand all of these different aspects and the full dimension of the change so that you can make a good impact analysis and give a good kind of input into what is going to be the impact if a change is implemented and approved. Let's look at the element 3, which is really the impact resolution. So this is where you document the impact analysis as well as the decision that was actually made in relation to the change request. And then you communicate the details of this change request with the impact analysis and the decision, whether it was to proceed, deny it, or defer it, according to the BA governance approach that you've defined. So keep track of all of the changes and keep it documented in a way where you can refer back to it. Okay. So now if we then look at the very last task within requirements lifecycle management, approve requirements. Now this one can sometimes also be a bit sticky, but let's see how we can make sure that we follow best practice. So according to the BABOK guide, the purpose is to obtain agreement on and approval of requirements and designs for business analysis work to continue or for the solution construction to proceed. So the elements of this is you need to understand the stakeholder roles, you need to have a process for conflict and issue management, gain consensus, and track and communicate approval. So the first element around understand stakeholder roles. So here it's really about referring back to your business analysis governance plan and understand who are the stakeholders that's been identified as the approvers of your particular requirements. Now keep in mind that although you may only have a couple of approvers, there will be still a lot of people that's got a say or an opinion, and they are able to influence those final approvers. So make sure everybody is still informed, everybody feels included, and make sure that you bring them all on the journey to help make this step where you ask for approval really easy and smooth. Because you will know from experience that often a more senior manager who may need to sign or approve a particular set of requirements will simply ask their team, what do they think? So that's why I'm saying, remember to keep everybody engaged. Okay, so element 2, conflict and issue management. So it's your role as a business analyst to identify any stakeholder conflicts regarding requirements and then to work towards reaching a common consensus among stakeholders. So here I'm saying to you that an effective way to do this is to run a workshop where these conflicts are actually raised and resolved. It's probably the fastest way to manage your conflicts and issues because everybody's in the room, everybody can make their case, and people can make some trade-offs and get some consensus. Otherwise, if you have to try and navigate through individual meetings to get things resolved, it might take a very long time and it will be much harder. So do it with a meeting or a workshop. All right, so the third element with approved requirements is like what we've said just before. It's about working towards gaining consensus prior to final sign-off. So even if there are sometimes still some conflicts that's hanging out and hasn't been resolved, all you need to do in that case is to document what you've done to try and resolve it, but also raise a risk and manage this accordingly in the project. Okay, and finally, element 4. This is really all about track and communicate approval. So you really just have to record and communicate the approvals that you got for your project. Make sure everybody knows where you're up to so that people can take the next step or go to the next stage. And also remember to update your requirements attributes to say that they are now approved. Right, so like I always say, this is the fun part. So let's see how much of all of these tasks you've understood, and just do a very short flash quiz. So the first question, when a relationship is identified between an implementation element and the requirements it is satisfying during this task requirements traceability, what type of traceability is performed? 3, 2, 1. Satisfy. Remember that category? I think that was the third category that we discussed. All right, so the next question. Question 2. You should maintain requirements attributes even if the requirement doesn't change. Is that true or false? 3, 2, 1. True, of course. You should always do that. All right, so the last question. True or false again? When you assess a requirements change and do an impact analysis, you need to look at the benefit, cost, schedule, urgency, and impact. Is that true or false? 3, 2, 1. True. All of those things need to be considered. Great, wonderful. I hope you got all 3 of the questions right. Now over to you. Same as always, please go and raise some questions, things that you might not be sure about. Give some examples. We would love to hear how you manage your prioritization, or how do you get your approvals, and how do you manage change? And when you describe how you manage change in your initiative, tell us whether it's a predictive or an adaptive approach within your team, and tell us if it's working or not. Let's learn from each other. And again, anything that we should know about the exam, please share it with everybody else. We're on the same journey. Great, thank you very much again. I look forward to sharing the next video with you soon.